All right, class, my name is Nick. I'll be your instructor today, and the first thing we're going to learn today is going to be how to make a proper seam in carpet. First and foremost, we're going to go over the tools necessary of making the seam. We're going to start with an awl or a row finder, and this helps us separate the yarn of the carpet in order to get a proper straight line. Okay? The next tool that we're going to use is going to be a top cutter, which obviously, as you guys can tell, has got two blades, one on each side. What that allows us to do is cut the carpet and make sure that the gauge is the same throughout the length of the seam, okay? With different carpets, you're gonna experience different thicknesses on the gauge. This is a very heavy plush, so probably about the 58 to a 62 ounce. So it's very close together. You're not gonna need to probably change the blade as much as you would do with a frisé, which will, as Dave knows, we learned at a very young age, probably 30 years ago, we used to call it small porch, big porch, and this is what this tool does. Also, we have a loop cutter, which I like to use a lot, not just on Berber carpets or loop carpets, but also you can use it on pretty much any type of plush, frisés, etc. You know, same thing with this. You can put two blades in it, or you can switch the blade from one side to the other. This has got a nice guard on it, so this way you don't have to, just like with this one, the blade sticks out, and sometimes you either cut the pad or you're gonna cut on the floor, okay? So, going forward, we're gonna learn how to use both of those tools, okay? After we do the cutting, we're gonna use a seam sealer, and this is one of the most important parts of the job, just like the seam is. You know, 9 out of 10 customers gonna, the most important thing they're gonna care about is the seam. They're gonna be, oh, you're gonna make an invisible seam. I like to always have a conversation with the customer and kind of educate them there is no such a thing as a visible seam. And I always used to use a very old history lesson that one of my teachers taught me. His name was Tom Lamont. He probably was in the business ever since the early 60s because he used to still sew carpet together and use a spit and tack hammer. And he always say, you go to, let's say, Kmart and you buy a suit, you're still gonna see the seams, right? Customer's gonna say yes. Well, now you go to a tailor where you're gonna have a custom-made suit and it's gonna cost you $5,000. Are you still gonna see the seams? And of course, the customer's gonna agree. Okay, so same thing with carpet. You're taking two pieces of product, you cut it, you put it together. Some of them are gonna be more forgiving, some of them are not. You're gonna see the seam. So get them ready for that, okay? The worst thing you wanna do is have a customer who's gonna be disappointed that he's gonna see a seam, even if it's a little bit or not, okay? So with that said, it's very important to seal the seams. We have two different methods that we're gonna use today. The first one is an acrylic product, which is in a liquid form, and we're gonna bond the secondary and the primary backing and fill in all the little holes that we're gonna create by cutting the two pieces of carpet, okay? This usually takes about 20 minutes to dry. Then the second method we have is the Peak Buster glue gun, which uses obviously an acrylic silicone with a UV tracer inside, same thing like the liquid does. This one, it's much easier to use, faster application, and the dry time is less than a minute, okay? We're also gonna have to use a UV light tracer. What this does, it allows you to see if you distribute it and apply either the acrylic or the glue from the Peak Buster glue gun evenly and throughout the whole length of the seam, okay? After we do that, we're gonna use the seam iron, which is gonna melt this thermoplastic tape. As you guys can see, there are a bunch of varieties, a bunch of different type of colors. but they all do the same exact thing. They're gonna bond the two pieces together, and it's gonna make us a very nice and long-lasting seam, which hopefully is gonna last longer than the backing of the carpet. I don't know that you guys probably don't know much about the seam tape, but the way it's constructed, it's on a paper, it's got a textile mesh, which is, then they apply the thermoplastic right on top of that, and that makes a very good bond with a primary backing and the secondary backing by adhering to the back of the carpet, and it's gonna be lasting for a very long time. It's a very durable tape. I don't care how strong you are, you're not gonna be able to tear it the length of it, as you guys can tell. But tears very easy the width of it, okay? Once we start making the seam, we're gonna use the seam iron, which obviously, as you guys can tell, it's a very hot apparatus, which it warms up the plate on the bottom, and it's got a thermostat dial on top, okay? Usually, depending on the type of the carpet that you use, it's always good to put this to a required temperature by the manufacturer. Usually, we'll go probably around anywhere between 280 and 320. Some carpets require a lower temperature for burning the seams. Some of them requires a higher temperature. As of right now, we're gonna set it at 320 and go with that, okay? To help.
Hey, Nick, take that seat tape right off. That's just gonna get.
Yeah, don't be like me.
All right? That's good. It's just gonna get your weight off. All right.
I know you're doing tonight. Started a trend over here.
All right, in order to help us get that glue into the backing of the carpet, we're gonna use a couple of things. This is a weight, and obviously, as you guys can tell, it's made out of metal, and it's a perforated metal with a plastic bottom, okay? What that allows is the steam that the heat creates when you're making the seam to dissipate by going right through it, and allows you to have a nice and cool seam by the time you're done. The second apparatus that we use is the simmer down, which serves two purposes. One is gonna pull the glue from the tape into the backing of the carpet, making it more secure and more suited for a perfect seam. The second one is it pulls also the seam while you place it on it. This, we like to call it a tractor, roller, seam roller, etc. Also, it allows the installer to push from the top to make sure that the backing of the carpet makes a nice bond with the seam tape and the thermoplastic glue on it, okay? With all that said, the only thing I can touch base on would be the kicker, which obviously this must be Dave's kicker because it weighs about 110 pounds.
Step for man.
And what we use this just to set and help us set the seam, okay? With all that said, is everybody ready to see how a seam is made? All right, let's start this. First and foremost, we gotta cut a row, find a row first. So the way you do that is you can use a number of different things. I'm pretty sure you guys are wondering what are all those things doing here, but a lot of people have different preferences. Me, myself, I used to use I like using one of those, okay? As you can tell, it goes pretty easy through it, okay? And just like I explained to you guys earlier, you can use the top cutter, or you can use the blue pile cutter. I'm gonna show you how to use both of them, okay? You apply pressure to the bottom and continue in a straightforward motion without moving your wrist too much. As you can tell, I got a little bit of difficulty in the beginning, but we have a nice clean cut on both sides. the yarns are not sheared, and obviously you can tell by the blade setting which is the big porch, as you can tell here. You got more material, backing material on this side, and this will be the little porch, which you barely have any material on the side, and the yarn is right next to it. Okay? Do the same process. You just pull the other blade out. But in this case, I'm gonna use this so I can show you guys how it's done with this one, okay? Same thing, use your row finder to find a row. Double check it, make sure it's straight. And this, as you guys can tell, it's got a guard on the bottom, but the same process. You can put blades on both sides. You drop it down as you please, and same thing, just like it was before. Now you got your little porch and your big porch, and your seam is ready to be sealed and made, okay? The next step on that process would be applying the acrylic. Like I said, I haven't used this probably in 20 some years, but I'll give it a shot. Just to make sure I don't overdo it, you just run your finger, and as you guys can tell, it's pretty much a perfect application. The acrylic stayed right on the back and where it's supposed to be, not on top of the fibers. Okay? Now we're gonna do the same thing, but using the Peak Buster glue gun, which is one of my favorite tools in the whole industry. And I think me and Dave, we got this at the same time. Because that's how old we are. All right. It's a very easy process on using the Peak Buster glue gun. It's obviously you fed it in through this hole. You got your glue sticks, and make sure you always spend the extra couple of dollars to get the UV tracer inside of it, okay? The inspectors, they like to have a field day every time they come into a carpet installation, and there's a issue with any type of the carpet or the installation. The first thing they will do is shine that UV tracer light on it to make sure that you guys put it on there. So let's try not to give them any ammunition to deny the claim and blame it on the installer. So make sure you always use the acrylic or the Peak Buster glue gun to seal your seams. And this is a very easy process. It's got a trigger which feeds the glue stick in it, and the tip is very hot and it melts it, and just like Dave touched on it, you probably can do about 80 to 100, 110 feet when this is hot, okay? So we're just gonna take the tip of the gun, apply it right to the backing, and squeeze and slide. Okay? We're gonna do the same thing on this side. And obviously we're not gonna have the same luxury when we install the carpet in a big room, because you're not gonna be able just to flip a piece of carpet and do what I just did right now. Okay, well, that's all done. And now just to kind of give you guys an example on how the application went. As you can tell, it's all the way from one end to the other. Same thing on this side. As you can tell, it goes from one way to the other. One thing I want to kind of bring to your guys' attention, the reason that we stress so much on using either or method is because it's going to help us with the bond that the seam tape is going to make on their seam. You're going to get a double mount. You're going to get the seam tape from the back, and also the latex or the Peak Buster glue gun is going to give you the side bond, okay? So that helps with two things. One is to stop the seam from peaking, and also it makes the seam much stronger than not using the latex or obviously the pink buster glue gun when making the seam, okay? All right, now that we're ready to put the seam tape under, I'm gonna remove the pad. Obviously, that's not gonna be a luxury that we're gonna have on a job site. So my advice to you guys would be, just take a piece of Luan, a 4x8 sheet, cut it about 1.5 feet wide, and use that to make your seam on top of padding. Not unless you have an 8-pound pad that is very stable that you can use, but my advice would be still to use the Luan due to the fact that the heat from the seam iron is gonna melt, especially if you have, let's say, odor-bound pad or a spill resistant pad. It's got the plastic film on top of it, and that's gonna kind of make the tape stick to that, and you're gonna ask for problems, okay? So my advice to you is always use some type of Luan board underneath, or making it on a flat wood surface or cement. Well, cement not so much, because you know the cold cement is gonna make your seam twice as long to make. So keep that in mind, okay? We're gonna apply and put the seam tape underneath our piece. Let's pretend that this right here is our big piece for the room, and this is just our fill piece, okay? So what I like to do is just always leave a little extra out. Use a knife to cut the seam tape to make sure it gives you a nice clean edge. And this way you're not gonna have no issues with the end of the tape whatsoever if you have to put a crossing or anything else that you have to deal with. The tape itself has got a bead in the middle separated by 2 black lines, as you guys can all see. And that helps you kind of guide the tape in the right direction and right position when you put it underneath your 2 pieces of carpet that you're gonna turn into one, okay? So just like so, set that on there. And make sure it's centered. And of course, the carpet basic, make sure that your yarn goes the same way. What I like to tell people, and obviously over the years, you just make it your own, how you want to explain this to customers, but I always explain to them that the carpet's got the velvet effect. 9 out of 10 different styles of carpet, you're gonna have that velvet effect. So what I mean by velvet, I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with velvet. It's got a dark or a light side to it. So just by doing this to the carpet, you can tell the yarn is flattened down, and that's the direction of it, going with it. And if you run your hand this way, you will see that that's gonna turn dark and give you that light and dark effect. Sometimes the carpet comes from the factory where the yarn is reversed. You know, sometimes they roll the carpet way too fast before it cooled off, and in the shipping process, the yarn reversed. And that gets a little bit tricky. So in order to do that, you just need a piece of paper, if you don't mind, young man. Yes, thank you, appreciate that. You just place a piece of paper on there and kind of do the little rolling, and they'll tell you which way the direction of the yarn goes. As you guys can see, it's like walking the dog, you know what I'm saying? All right, thank you, appreciate that. It's been a pleasure. All right, one thing that we always gotta keep in mind is when we make the seams, make sure that you are not going against the yarn. You gotta go with the yarn, okay? So obviously, got myself into a little pickle right here, so I have to turn it around. You figure 3 other trainers did it prior to me, but bear with me, I get this right. There we go. that way? Okay, forget about it. Play the video guy, huh? Okay, we're gonna get all our necessary tools to start this little seam. Most important piece of equipment that we're gonna use is gonna be the seam iron. As stated before, be very careful. It gets very hot. And one thing that I wanna kind of give you guys a heads up, if you get some of that glue on your hand or fingers, don't try to wipe it, because all you're gonna do is just spread it everywhere, and you're gonna just be twice as bad hurt. So I think I got scars from when I did it the first time, but obviously it was the last time, because it was a very, very, very painful experience. So let's not do that. Okay, as we can tell, our seam iron is already at the desired temperature, which is in this case about 320 degrees. So we're gonna start doing our seam. Alright. Lifting the iron up. Oh, well, it's a little bit dirty. So what I like to do once in a while to clean the iron is use a piece of carpet, scrap carpet, and just
Thanks for clarifying that.
run a couple of times on it.
You're never gonna sell that piece.
No. But as you guys can tell, the iron is as good as new. Okay? Little trick I learned when I was young.
Pro tip.
Last week. All right, we'll lift up one side. Place our iron right on the tape. Make sure that everything's still nice and centered. And now we're gonna let it do its job, which is gonna melt the thermoplastic and allow us to start making the seam, okay? It might take a few seconds, so just kind of like pay attention, make sure the tape doesn't get burned. You can tell the temperature variation can be a little tricky sometime, and obviously give it enough time for the red light to disappear. They got some fancier ones out there that they got the UV light and lights and stuff. I got one of those in the truck, but I didn't want to show off. So I'm gonna use Dave's iron. All right, we're gonna slide the iron slowly. I would go probably about halfway to 3/4 of the way. Double checking, make sure that our two pieces touch and we don't have a gap. Okay, I'm pretty sure, Jerry, you cannot see because you're too far, but there's no gap.
There's
No gap. All right, we're gonna use our roller. And as I explained to you guys earlier, the roller, what it does, it pushes the backing of the carpet into the thermoplastic glue, which is obviously melted now, and allow us to bind the two pieces together and form a strong bond. Okay? We're just gonna continue slowly and gently pull the seam iron as we slide it down. Same thing. Check it, make sure it's still together. If it's not, use your kicker to get those two pieces nice and tight and without gap. Now you can put a weight on it, and just like I explained to you guys earlier, it serves the same purpose, pushing and applying weight on that carpet so the backing will adhere to that thermoplastic melted adhesive that is on the tape now. This is going to be the loudest part of the experiment, and the demonstration is when we're going to turn that on, and it's gonna make a loud noise, just like a vacuum, because literally that's what they use, right? They use the vacuum engine, then they.
Yep.
So-
All it is.
Somebody was thinking when they invented it, huh?
Yeah.
As we continue making our seam, obviously this is only a 3-footer. You always want to make sure that both pieces are tight together. They're not separated by you being on it, or the customer walking on, or the dog trying to play with it, or any other distractions or where things that might occur while you're with your back towards the end of the seam. Same process applies all the way down. The seam, most likely you're gonna have a wall, so the best way to remove the iron from the seam tape would be just kind of like sliding motion and lift. Okay, place the iron on a tray, make sure you do that. You don't never want to place it on a carpet, and put the other end of the carpet back in place. That's how we make a seam. Any questions? I know Dave has some.
Well, just a comment, but yeah, no, you did a good job. But something you did that was really good, exceptional, I'll say, is you weren't afraid to engage the crowd. People sitting there weren't afraid to joke with them a little bit. I mean, think about it, Jerry. When he said that to you, did you lean over and look a little closer when he did that?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's you know why I did that to you? Because you were falling asleep. No, I'm teasing. But no, that's how you do that. You know, if you got a guy that you're working with, you should never be afraid to poke at each other just a little bit in a loving way.
Yeah.
You know, hey, you know, Dave, you remember this. You're old.
Yeah.
You're right. That's fine. That's fine. You know your boundaries, of course. But at the same time, there's those types of things that bring people in. They want to hear. I like how you took the time to explain each tool. You spend a lot of time explaining prep. And you actually use the word system, which is cool. You know, because really, when we're selling seams to our customers, we sell them a seam system. When you think about it, I'll use an Orcon iron or a crane iron or an Orcon glue gun. You know, I use Robert seat tape. I use, you know, it's about a system, right? Not beg and borrow from each one of them to get that system together. So yeah, that's a good word to use. All right, and I like the way you talked about the seam finish up. I thought you did a good job, Nick. I really did. Now the thing about it is, right away when you started, notice how when you finished up, how you set that iron on top of there. Now turn it right off. All right, or turn it down to off. The reason you do that is because that allows that to build in, so you don't have that mess. All right, and really, we're setting each other up to fail because that seam tape should be on there and it should be turned off and allowed to dry. Then it works. It's not going to work when it's still wet. And so as we're passing it along to each other, it makes it a little tougher. But that being said, hey, good stuff. All right, who's next?